Hello everyone, I am Roberto Vieira and I am honored to be here today to share my experience with the intention of supporting you in raising the bar on making games. Have you ever had to deal with someone in your team who's not performing as you're expecting? Probably you had, and if not, most likely you will. Whether you're in a leadership position or not, there are going to be times when a team member is not going to match your expectation or somebody else's. I've been working in software development and technology for almost 20 years, and about 15 of those managing teams and organizations from 2 to 100 people on development, maintenance, operations, infrastructure, systems, and IT. In fintech, travel, and in the game industry for the past 7 years with Activision Blizzard King, Wargaming, and most recently, Virtually Human. During the journey, I have had the pleasure to work with diverse teams, highly multicultural, sometimes distributed, sometimes collocated, and there have been two things that are common to those different functions, industries, environments, and their permutations. The first one is people, dealing, working, and spending time with them. That's something I'm passionate about. Getting things done, together, collaborating to achieve a common goal, jointly developing the game, playing it and sharing the experience, and ultimately enjoy the player's feedback. So, what's the other thing I have found is common? The other thing that's there in every scenario is change, but way more present in our industry. The games industry is too dynamic. The market is continuously growing, the platforms constantly evolving and popping out. The race is too aggressive, and as a result, the game development lifecycle funnel is very wide at its beginning and very narrowed at its end. As a consequence, game development is a roller coaster of emotions in a multidimensional spectrum of magnitudes for every single person. This constant change is what raises the odds even more for you to be dealing with someone who's performing differently from what you're expecting. I will put a pin on change and come back later to it and focus on people for the time being. You want to make the game to deliver that awesome player experience, right? To make that happen, you want every member of your studio to thrive so that the entirety of it outperform and ultimately adds value to the organization. It takes a person to perform under expectations to derail from that goal. The level of contribution of such individual decreases, and that impacts the outcomes of your organization. That is because the situation will impact their peers, their contributions, their throughput, and virally or as a domino effect, it will spread, causing an underestimated damage. Nobody wants that, and it requires action. The action potentially involves confrontation, challenge, and candor, which makes it an uncomfortable, not a straightforward situation, and therefore something most people consciously or unconsciously rather avoid. For that reason, often it is an area of improvement for leaders to manage underperformers. From identifying the situation and the cause to confront and take action, in this talk, I will provide you with an approach to effectively and efficiently deal with low performers so that you can minimize the negative impact and maximize the value your organization can provide and get that awesome player experience delivered. Let's start by identifying underperformance. People, humans, are both complex and complicated. subjective, non-deterministic, and therefore challenging to classify or encapsulate when attempting to situate ourselves in boxes. With that as a disclaimer, I will share some experience that have had things in common among them, so that they allowed me to think of some sort of personas or profiles that can help in identifying underperformers and deal with them successfully. Let me tell you the story of Jan. Jan joined my team after successfully going through an extensive hiring process. The hiring process involved a technical test, a technical interview to validate the test, and several other interviews to validate that Jan would fit culturally in the organization. Sounds familiar? Yes, as you will see later, it says a lot about hiring processes, but that on its own is an entirely different talk. Coming back to Jan, Jan nailed the process. Top scoring on the test, awesome walkthrough in the technical interview, and the perfect fit for the team. Jan started glued with the rest of the team perfectly, settled in smoothly, and in no time felt like Jan has been with us for ages. Jan got their first task assigned, and I and the rest of the team were looking forward to seeing the wonderful outcomes Jan was expected to produce. Some weeks went by, and the results were not there. Okay, let's give some time. Maybe the learning curve was underestimated. Maybe some more time for ramping up. Rings a bell for you, huh? Few more weeks went by, and still nothing. Progress was minimal. The organization was expecting to start seeing the artifacts Jan was supposed to produce so that those could be used to ease the delivery of many other components. Furthermore, Jan's teammates were dedicating part of their time to support Jan so that Jan could develop those artifacts, and therefore they were frustrated because their investment was not fruitful. In summary, it was crystal clear Jan was not delivering, therefore performing below expectations. And as a result of that, the productivity of a significant part of the organization wasn't increasing, and the sentiment within the team was starting to fall apart, having an effect in their motivation and their overall performance. Hence, the impact of Jan's underperformance was beyond Jan and the team. It was about time to manage the situation. Let's talk about that later and continue identifying underperformance. Now let's talk about Feb. You might have gotten the cue now. Differently to Jan, Feb has been a part of the organization for several years, even before I joined. Feb kept a solid record of achievement, consistently meeting the expectations that were set. Feb was part of the family, got along well with everyone, and collaborated smoothly. A great team player. Things started to change, and the adjective and adverb I just used, solid and consistent, couldn't be used anymore. The daily stand up started to sound repetitive, as in still working in the same task, though no blockers. Felt like no progress. Probably people in the audience have gotten that feeling sometimes, right? Moreover, teammates' help offers were rejected. It didn't take long for the team members to start depending on what Fed was supposed to deliver. The feeling within the team was that it shouldn't take that long, and even more, they could just do it themselves. The glue in the team became fragile. The team forecasted they were about to miss a deadline this time, luckily, not in the critical path of the project. The similitude between Jan and Feb is the symptoms and the consequences. Both situations surfaced by undelivered commitments, and both situations ended up impacting their team's morale and their outcomes. Before jumping into how to deal with it, let's see some other profiles. I will now tell you about Mar and May. Their story is a bit different. Compared to Jan and Feb, they did deliver. Still, there was some unhappiness within the team. In this case, Mar has been with the company for a few years. He grew within it, achieved a higher level of seniority after being promoted, recognizing a consistent performance over what was expected for Mar's previous career level. On Mar's new level of seniority, it was expected a higher degree of autonomy, meaning that the assignments were given in the form of objectives or outcomes instead of digested and directed tasks, so that Mark could figure out how to solve the problems on their own. The person leading the team distributed the work thinking of this. To balance the support, less senior members should get with the needs of the feature they were working on. Still, Mar wasn't able to figure out solutions by themselves. Mar required a lot of hand-holding, borrowing Mar's team lead bandwidth to support others and or contribute to the delivery. Have you ever had that sensation of, I should be doing something else? That's what the team lead was feeling. Mar was slowing down the lead and indirectly slowing down the less senior members of the team that required the lead support. That ended up decreasing the throughput of the team and overburning the project's budget. Again, the situation required to be managed. May's case was pretty similar, except that in this case, the impact was directly on the teammates. The work was being done and delivered, but with the need for an unexpected amount of involvement by the teammates. I am not talking about collaboration or help, but something borderline to actually having the teammates doing the work for me. Have you ever had the feeling of, I am not helping you to do your work, but actually doing your work? That's the feedback that was coming from the team, surfacing the frustration they were feeling and again slowing down on their own progress and the team's overall success. In both cases, work was getting done, just not at the pace it was expected, and therefore it required digging deeper on where the issue was coming from to identify the lower performance of a specific team member within the team. Let's see another couple of profiles that can help to identify underperformers. In one of my experiences, I inherited an organization that was already running for quite a while. The senior management of such an organization told me I should let June go as soon as possible. That would be an easy way to identify that someone is underperforming, I thought. Still is probably not, and I'd rather work it out from scratch. My first discovery was that the feedback from the team was great. Hence, where was the disconnect? June worked hard and smart and got things done. Makes you wonder, how is this going to be an underperforming case then? John was doing something different to what the senior management was expecting, and the team did not know what was expected from John. Therefore, there was no indication for the team that something was wrong. In any case, work was being done, The team felt it was valuable, but the senior management did not appreciate it as such. As a result, something that needed to be done was not being done by June as expected, and therefore June was not performing to expectations. The situation required to be managed. A slightly similar case was that one of Jule. The difference between June and Jule is that Jule's teams did know what to expect. Jule was adding value, just a different value than the one the teammates and the organization were expecting. Jule's focus was where it was not required nor needed, or at least not needed at that exact moment. Jule thought differently, took things on their own, and decided that the right thing to do was something else. Jules' teammates were getting upset because their common goals were not being achieved and the dependencies among them were getting blocked. As a result, Jules was bringing gain to the team. Still, the feature Jules' teams was working on got delayed, and Jules' team's morale got hurt. The team became fragile, and action had to be taken. How about another anecdote that might help to identify a performance issue? This profile, I don't explicitly call it an underperforming due to the ambiguity it brings because somehow it can be considered an outperformer. It was the case of Og, a team member that's been for ages part of the organizations I manage. Because of that, Og was extensively knowledgeable and seasoned in all the things we were producing there. Og was recognized by everyone as the go-to person for an endless variety of subjects and was considered as an authority. How come Og underperformed, you might wonder? Well, the case was that because of seniority, Og was expected to support less senior members of the organization. And Og was doing that, just not as expected. Og would be there for everyone, just not exactly coaching, mentoring, supporting, and or delegating, but only providing a strong direction. I would like to stress of saying only providing a strong direction are as there could be situations where the strong direction is required, as described in the situational leadership theory of Hersey and Blanchard. Just should not be the style all the time. Can you figure what was happening with the work? Yes, it was getting done. The team was delivering, and the goals and milestones were being achieved. What's the problem then? The team engagement, morale, and happiness was decreasing over time. It was decreasing because Og was removing its autonomy, undermining their capacity to add value on their own, and in the long term, there was going to be an impact on their motivation, their engagement, and the overall productivity of the organization. Og's team members were expecting Og's support, and they got it, just not always in the way they wanted, needed, nor enjoyed. One more situation to be managed. Another one challenging to spot was Seb. Similarly to Og, Seb had everything needed to outperform. In this situation, the work was also getting done. The results that Seb's team was achieving were the expected ones, and even more. Seb's teammates were happy with the results, and the collaboration and support Seb was giving to them What's wrong then? You might be trying to guess. The problem was that to achieve SEP's team goals, SEP was taking over resources of the organization that other teams needed to achieve their own goals. And therefore, the overall organizational objectives were being impacted because those other teams were not able to achieve the results as expected. Seb was in a leadership role, and as such, it was expected from Seb not to only look after Seb's team's objectives, but also support other teams in achieving the organization expected results. Definitively another situation to manage. I know I said I was going to share a few experiences to profile 4 personas that can help to identify underperformers. Still, as it seems like time permits, I would like to share 2 more memories that I think could be helpful. Underperforming doesn't only narrows to objectives, goals, outcomes, and delivery. There is another important aspect to it. That is behavior. Let me quickly tell you about Oct and Nov. Oct was a highly valuable member of one of my teams. On one occasion, we were celebrating the release of a major feature. Everyone was having fun in a relaxed environment. Unfortunately, Oct went beyond the limits and crossed a boundary that made uncomfortable another person that was attending the celebration. Oct did not attach to the behaviors that were expected from every member of the organization. That adds to the types of situations that need dealing with. Nov was also a valuable team member. Nov had a sense of humor very characteristic and borderline to being offensive. Similarly, on one occasion, one of Nov's jokes made a team member very uncomfortable. Then another situation where the behavior was not as expected and needed to be managed accordingly. So Jan, Feb, Mar, May, June, Jul, Aug, Sept, Oct, and Nov were all at some point underperforming and generating a situation that impacted either their performance, the performance of their teams, the performance of their organization, or a combination of some or all of them. Having some awareness of these profiles and being able to identify them or similar ones within your teams or even on yourself should help you to efficiently deal with them by reducing the time to act. Let's jump now into action so that you can have some tools to deal with them not only efficiently but also effectively and therefore successfully. To manage the underperforming situation efficiently, it is important to act fast. To manage it effectively, it is important to act assertively. So, to achieve both, my suggestion is to get to the point by diagnosing and confronting. But before getting into the details of those, it is fundamental to think about trust as the very first step to successfully manage an underperforming. Trust your team members. Trust that they are part of your team and your organization for a very valid reason, whether it was you who brought them in or they've been there prior to your arrival. Trust that they are capable to add value to your organization. Trust that they are reliable and that you and your team can count on them. Trust that their intentions is aligned towards the overall organizational goals and not only their own. I trust Jan, Femp, and the rest in all of these aspects. It doesn't mean I was right, but it is the right starting point, as it is unlikely the reason for performing below expectations is either because of their capability, reliability, or their self orientation. Why do I say it's unlikely? Time to bring back the pin topic of change. In a constant and highly changing environment, the probability of a variation being the cause of degradation in performance is very high. Think about it. Your game or a feature might be having a major pivot, and your team members are required to leave something that they've created and nurtured to engage with something completely new. Or your target platform has changed, and it might not necessarily be the area of expertise of your team. Or your engine of choice is no longer viable, and you need to reconsider your choice and ramp up in a different tech stack. There's a whole topic of change management we could get into here. Yet, not being exactly the point, it is still highly recommended to not leave that aside. So, what's the point? The point is, with so much change, not to mention other changes unrelated to the industry, like a pandemic, you could further anchor the trust I just spoke about and move on to the diagnose on the basis of questioning. Has something changed? Diagnosing and assessing what's possibly causing a person to underperform is key to success in managing this situation. It will be the foundation to a successful confrontation and problem solving later on. Once trusting the person, it's been taken for granted. The best next step is that one that I recently mentioned. You are right. Ask, has something changed? Is it possible that there are environmental conditions at work that can cause Jan to underperform? Is Feb lacking the skills to do the job at hand? Is Feb lacking the skills to add value at all? Is this situational? And if so, how long will the situation last? Feedback, feedback, feedback. Feedback is fundamental. You could think of it as decision making. The more information you can gather, the more informed decision on a way forward you will be able to take, and the lower uncertainty and risk you will have to manage. This is a challenging piece because of two reasons. First, to increase the amount of feedback, you will need to look for different sources of information, including other people within the organization. Hence, you will have to respect the privacy of your team member and navigate the level of candors within your organization. Bring in your best leadership skills to foster psychological safety and a culture of feedback, and you will smooth the path to gather information. The second reason why getting the feedback is challenging is that the most important source for it is the person themselves. Therefore, there is a fair overlap between the diagnose and the confrontation. On top of that, similarly, there's the need for respecting the person's privacy and enable a safe environment for them. For instance, when working with FEB, the data I gathered hinted the problem was not within the working environment. Work-related changes nor a lack of skills. Still, I didn't just ask Feb, what's wrong with your personal life? Instead, I approached it from a supportive perspective within the confrontation, so that it was up to Feb to share or not. Let me walk you through it so that we can also move forward to confrontation. What do you think? We humans naturally avoid conflict and having a controversial conversation, a confrontation, is something nobody wants to do. Yet, remember what I told you about how Oct, Nov, and the rest were impacting performance beyond their own. Trust me on this one. You rather not avoid nor delay the confrontation. To speed it up, look for acknowledgement with clarity. Articulate very well what's going on and get acknowledgement of the existence of a problem. When working with Feb, I clearly told Feb what I saw about the lack of progress. Coach Feb towards realizing the impact it was causing on the roadmap, and furthermore, I asked Feb to share thoughts about the impact on the team. That way, Feb acknowledged there was a problem, a situation to be managed. We got to the same page and connected. With that acknowledgement, it is just the perfect time to let them know that you trust them. With Feb and I on the same page about a problem that needed to be addressed, I let Feb know that I believe Feb could do the job at hand. I used facts to highlight Feb's solid record and the evidence of Feb's skills. This showcases that you are being supportive and non judgmental and enables psychological safety. With the situation acknowledged and a supportive approach, it is time for alignment, specifically alignment in expectations. This is the cornerstone of this entire topic. You might have guessed, as I have referred to expectations many times now. Can you guess how many? About 30 times. The vast majority of times that you will deal with a low performer, the root cause will be a misalignment in expectations. Either the expectations are not clear to one of the parties, or they are interpreted differently, or they have changed without clearly communicating it, or there is a disagreement among them. That was the case for most of the experience I shared previously. Even if it's not the case that there is a misalignment in expectations, it doesn't hurt to reaffirm what is expected. Actually, it is the opposite. It solidifies the foundation for agreeing on the way forward. This was the case for May. There was no misalignment in expectations, but was great to reaffirm the alignment on those to move to the next step. Remember Og, the awesome senior who supported the team by only giving a strong direction? I followed the same diagnosing and confronting approach with Og. Got to the acknowledgement, agreed to support without judgment, and reached this exact same point for alignment. In this case, the expectations misalignments was about supporting other team members. While it was clear that Og was expected to support the team, it wasn't clear to Og that it was expected to be done in a way where the team members could both grow and deliver. Resetting that expectations and digging in its granularity, making it clear was the pillar to agree in a way forward and move to the next step. With the situation acknowledged, a supportive approach, and an alignment in expectation, it is time for a plan. This is the moment for asking questions like, how is the situation going to improve? How long will it take? What support do you need? Another important question that should not be left unattended is, once success has been reached, how is it going to be sustained? As with any plan, you need to know beforehand what timings can you afford. This means considering things like, how is the situation impacting other teammates? How is it impacting delivery? That should help you figure out what sort of time frame and buffer can you afford to get the situation resolved. The expectations will dictate the goals of the plan. Basically, the ultimate goal is to be able to meet expectations, and those would be the measurement criteria for success. Now, the actions to implement in the plan will be subjective to what's causing the underperformance. And this is another challenging piece. If the root cause relies on the working environment, it might be easier to address, as in providing the right support, training, tools, redeployment, among other possibilities that are within your area of influence and impact. On the other hand, if the root cause relies outside of the working environment and therefore outside of your area of impact and influence, it will be more on the hands of the person to act and for you to remain supportive within the boundaries of your limitations. In the case of May, the causes were personal and originated outside of the working environment. May didn't have a problem with sharing. I guess the trust and the psychological safety helped. May and I agreed on the goals based on the reaffirmation of the expectations, and May committed to a plan that would allow them to sort out the causes, while I committed to support by giving the space and flexibility to execute on that plan. Og's situation was originated within the working environment instead. Similarly, Og agreed on the goals based on the expectations that were reset. The action plan required for Og included learning and practicing soft skills to better support others. I worked my way to provide Og with the mentorship to grow those skills and put them into practice. Executing on the plan rigorously and checking in frequently is fundamental to provide feedback, course correct if needed, and avoid surprises at the end of it. Which reminds me, as important as it is to align expectations, it is super important, extremely important to establish, agree, confirm, and reaffirm what are the possible outcomes of the plan. Whether it is a contract termination, a demotion, a redeployment, a compensation package review, or any other possibilities or a combination of them, it is highly advisable that it is explicit and known by all parties involved. These approaches, diagnosing and confronting, planning and executing, will help you be more effective in dealing with low performers by engaging the person in solving the problem and taking action to achieve goals and meet well-aligned expectations. At this stage, you should be equipped with a set of profiles that will help you to efficiently identify a low performer within your organization. Based on the experience I share with you, you could be capable to assess whether it is that someone is not delivering as expected or delivering other than what's expected, or preventing others to deliver as expected, or not enabling others to deliver as expected, or having a behavior different than expected. You will also have at hand an approach to managing the situation by diagnosing what's causing it and working with the low performer to acknowledge the situation, agree on a supportive approach, reset expectations, and engage in an action plan. If I would like you to take away one thing from this talk, is how important is to be aligned in expectations. Do you remember that the name of this talk makes reference to that nobody wants to do this? Right. Clear upfront expectations are the best way to avoid this. In a changing environment, revisiting those expectations often is another thing I would highly recommend. Thank you so much for keeping up with me to this point, and please reach out if I could be of any help.